his memory. Denny had a lot of funny traits. He always had a smirk on his face, obviously, because he liked a good joke. And he liked a good board meeting. He was pretty lively about it. So with that, we'll start the board meeting and ask everyone to please rise for the pledge, which you already are. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A roll call?
Mrs. West?
Here.
Mr. Keys?
Here.
Mr. Pearl?
Here.
Mr. Cannon?
Here.
Mr. Aragona?
Here.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yeah, here.
Mrs. Meltzer here.
Thank you. Mrs. Meltzer, are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
There are, item 12 is an add-on recommendation for Williams Log Cabin Restoration Change Order Number 2. And I ask that item number 9 be moved to item 4. And then also, item 4, though, is a recommendation by the Personnel Vacancy Review Committee, and I'd ask to postpone that and to the next board meeting. But the Human Resources Director is the one that put it on the agenda, so I just wanted to make
That's
sure
fine.
he was okay with that. Okay.
So moved.
Support. Thank you. So, roll call?
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passes.
Thank you, and I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. If you have anything to say about any item on the agenda, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record. If you have something that you would like to say that's not part of the agenda, we have public comment cards to your left in the front of the room. Please fill one out, and we'll hear what you have to say at the end of the meeting. And in the meantime, Mrs. West, you were very close to Mr. Tomlinson, as was I, so you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was close with Denny. I was able to serve with him from 2004 to 2008. And during that time, he was the clerk, I was the new trustee. He would call, he would make sure that I had anything and everything I needed to make an informed decision. And he would give any of that information to Mary Ann Hosey or to Margarama, who's here tonight, to make sure that I had that. Because he knew that I was new to this. But it was a real honor to work with them. Over the last 3 years, I've been able to see a lot more of Denny and his family, Elaine and the entire family, even the grandkids, up in Port Austin. Marty and I go up there to relax, and we've been able to see a lot of them and had a wonderful visit before, about 2 months ago now, before he passed, which was very special. He did give 28 years of his life to Clinton Township. There is an arboretum named after him, so that legacy will continue on. But I do think I need to say one other thing, and that is, unfortunately, 2019 has been a bad year for Clinton Township past board members. We also lost Ernie Hornig, who to me was just a gentle giant. Yeah, I promise I won't cry. But what I learned from both Denny and Ernie, big feet. They had big feet. We have big shoes to fill, and we need to fill those shoes with grace and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we'll take item number 1. Request for a fence variance on Newcastle.
To whom it may concern, this is Dave Gallagher looking to set up a board meeting to see if I can keep my fence by the riverside of my property. People throw trash and debris in this area that I have to clean up all the time. They cover the drainage pipe that has to be cleaned out. They cross my property to do this. I have lived here for 7 years, and it will not stop. Neighbors love the fence and are glad I put it up. I have worked with the township on this matter. They put up a no dumping sign that lasted about 1 year, and now someone took it down. Thank you, Dave Salaher from 38312 Newcastle, Clinton Township. In addition, there was a letter, Mr. Cannon, from a resident, and if I can read that into the minutes as well. The neighbor at 38312 installed a fence alongside of house, completely in front of house. It is not up to code and is horrible to look at. He talks of people putting garbage there. That happened once. He talked about a landscaper dumping leaves when he okayed it. I am of the belief none of this is his property. I've had numerous people walk by commenting how bad it looks. It was once a nice forest to look at, and it's kind of hard to read this. He did it in handwriting. He's asking people to sign a waiver, and he should have gotten this waiver before he put up the fence. It's too hard to read, so he's in opposition to it, so just basically that's the gist of it.
So you've got one letter in opposition, and we've got a signature of a number of residents around him who want the fence up.
There are, yes, and they are not opposed, they're in support of it, so.
Okay. I've seen it, I understand the problem, and I'm in support of your fence being put up, as long as you maintain the fence in the condition it's in now, which is pristine.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Open to the board.
Well, I agree, Mr. Cannon, if I may, I agree, I did see the fence, and I thought it was done very well, and flowers are on it, and I appreciate the fact that, you know, where you live, that you have, you know, the problem of people trespassing, and it's hard for you to manage without that fence there, so.
Well, it's on a little circle there, and the people on the other side have their fence to the telephone pole. And I just put 50 feet on the other side to keep all that down. It wasn't for the privacy, it was, you know. Okay.
Is there anybody else?
The floor is open for a motion.
Well, I think they want to, in the audience, there's other.
I'm sorry.
My name is Dennis Day, 38446 Newcastle. I live 5 houses away. The only garbage that was ever thrown in that area, what he calls the ditch, was 2 years ago. That's one time. There's no garbage there now. It hasn't been in a long time. The fence really deteriorates the block. And it's unfinished. It's an old fence. There's new pieces. He's had fence piled in the backyard. But it looks starting to look like a damn ghetto. And it used to be open for the deer runs to go through there. We used to go over there with the dogs to go to the spillway. I've been on this block since 1953. We've never had a problem at all with having no fence there. It looks like a wall. It just blocks off any view of the trees that abut the spillway for the autumn and spring. He has no fence, which I don't understand. There's a lot of people, I don't know how many people are supporting this. I didn't hear a number, but I know there's a lot of people who maybe didn't write, do not like this fence. And on the side of his property, which faces his backyard that faces the spillway, he has no fence there. So what's the purpose of the fence? We don't know why it was built. It blocks off the view. We think it's off, it's in front of his property. I'd like to know what the township building department thinks about it. If they refused a permit, he put it up without a permit, and all of a sudden now it's acceptable. I don't understand that, because it's off his property, and it goes beyond his property.
And you have to cross.
Let me finish.
No.
Hold on. There are no flowers on the fence. There's another fence around the corner that has flowers.
You don't mind that fence?
No, because it's well taken care of. It's a different kind of fence. It has flowers on it. They keep their dogs inside. It's when they have the fence. This blocks off, there's no reason to block this off for access to the spillway. There's no trash there. We walk it once a week, that Col-de-Sol. And we saw the trash a few years ago one time, and that's the only time it ever happened. And we know who did it, and that was corrected. Other than that, we don't like the fence. And it's not painted. We don't want it painted. We don't even want it up there. It just looks like it's beginning, it deteriorates the neighborhood.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, we have a picture of the fence here, as you can see. And
Well, yeah, we've seen the fence.
I'd like
Well,
to see the
we
photo.
could, yeah, that's
there's
fine.
no flowers or anything. It looks like a stockade wall. It's 6 feet tall.
Go back to the microphone, please. We can't hear you.
This is the exact same fence that has
It's
flowers on it.
at least 6 feet tall. I know the ordinance calls for 4.5 feet. And what's wrong with a chain link with a lock on it if there are people who are trespassing and dumping garbage? Now, what we know as the neighborhood, there was one lady who dumped her garbage. She's known. Someone went through her trash, found the name. It was addressed with her. I believe the police were called. She could be ticketed. Anybody who dumps the trash could be ticketed. There were signs up there, no dumping. It's our understanding from one of the people who do work with your township. The reason the no dumping signs were taken down is because they were put up by Mr. Morocco, and we all know that Candace Miller wanted Mr. Morocco's signs down, and so it was taken down because his name was on the sign. And it is, and you know, right now, you can say a lot of people like it. We have heard the very opposite. It feels like you're in prison. It feels like there's a factory on the other side or a box store. And this is a beautiful neighborhood. I don't know how many of you have ever been in it.
It is beautiful.
It is a beautiful, it's an old-fashioned neighborhood. It's not like a subdivision. And we had access to the spillway. It's right, borders the spillway. And to keep this up is an atrocity to the neighborhood. It just so happens this came on the agenda when I know of at least 4 families who oppose this, who are on the beach. We were the only ones left on our block, really, who aren't on vacation, and some new people who don't, you know, really aren't that aware. But we really urge you to not approve this fence. It's a wall, it's not a fence. It's, if you can see the picture, it's not attractive at all. And we're bypassing now, we're giving up, looking out at trees and greenery. The spillway was just, last year and the year before, thank you. The spillway, a lot of money was invested in the spillway through grants, I believe. They put in a fishing weir or a fishing dock. They planted, they made an island, they planted all of this wildlife food. They don't cut the grass now because they're encouraging wildlife. This spring, we had a goose, well, we had a whole flock of geese that landed in the park just right a few feet down from his house, across the road from our house, which, by the way, I'm Mary Ann Day, 38446 Newcastle. Didn't do that.
I figured you were with him.
Yeah. And these geese were something else. We thought, oh, no, we all know what geese do, right? These geese landed in the park, looked around, and walked single file down Asbury Park Road all the way to the river. Single file. It was just incredible. There had to have been 100 geese. We just had a deer that had a fawn. And we saw the fawn running from the fence looking for its mother. We have wildlife issues. We have beautification in the area issues. We really wish that this fence would not stay. It could, as I say, a chain link fence with a lock on it, if a fence has to go up, would be much more palatable to the eye.
Thank you. Yes, sir. We're going to let one more resident speak, and then you'll have the floor.
Sam Bushel, 18546 Wayland. This board, a few months ago, had a person that had a 3-foot picket fence that was lovely in the front yard, and just made him move it back 25 feet. This is a 6-foot privacy fence in the front yard, and including going beyond the front yard into other people's property, and this board is even considering approving it. That's hard to believe, and very, very, makes people wonder why some people can come in with one thing and get a problem, and have no problem, other people can come in and have a real problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. This board has to consider when people request things like this. Sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Ted McGregor, I live at 38419 Worcester Street. There are 5 properties that can actually see that fence. I'm one of the 5. The other 4 have all signed the petition. That fence is a second part of a fence that's already there that's overgrown with shrubbery, but all he did was continue. This is not in the front of his property. This is at the end of the cul-de-sac. There are, whether they think it or not, I've seen people dumping down there. Trees, bushes, maybe not garbage. But the other part I object to is there are people coming through there, and I see it because I live there at night with hoods on, coming from that area, walking down the streets. Now, our police department does a wonderful job, but they don't see that part of the property. So I object to having them come straight down my street into my house and to where my cars are. And I have some very expensive cars that I'm concerned about, and I love the neighborhood too. But I think we're looking at it 2 different ways. One, it's not on the front of his property, it's at the end of the cul-de-sac. And 2, it's a combination of safety and protection against this contamination of the property that leads to there. But that trail is only used, and I've maybe not seen the people who walk it, but I've only seen people coming from it, not to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just have to say, is the fence is on my property. And they have to walk through 7 feet of my property to do anything. To throw their trash, to go to the spillway. It's not public ground that they're walking over there to get to this.
Can you speak into the microphone for
Oh.
purposes of
Yeah.
audience?
Yeah, it's on my property, and the people have to walk over my property to get to the county's property. Right now, there's concrete round tubes this big. There's car transmissions, 1 transmission, and about 3 or 4 times a year, I take a bag and I go over there and I pick all the trash out of all the stuff that everybody throws in there.
On your property.
Well, no, it's on the county's property, but they have to walk through, over my property to throw this. And I got tired of going out there picking it up, and it looked bad.
Okay.
And that's what I didn't put it up for privacy. It's not that for privacy. It's to keep the dumping and everything. I cleaned it up real nice. Now, that fence will get a patina within the wintertime, and it'll look gray. And the trees and the whatever will start growing on that fence. So within a year, it's going to look good. And if you look at it, the fence from the telephone pole on the other side of the neighbors have got their privacy fence all the way to the pole. I'm just running mine 50 feet to keep all that down. Because with that 50 feet of fence, they would have to come like 40 feet into my yard to throw stuff, and they're not going to do that. It was easy for them to just back up or pull their lawnmowers and their stuff and throw it over there. And the sign that they put up did help. It did help.
Thank you.
But they took it down.
Mr. Argona?
Yeah, Barry, so the property across the cul-de-sac does also have a privacy fence?
Yes.
I'm not aware of any permit for it. Nothing's been granted through my department.
Okay,
It's probably
so-
grandfathered in. It's been there for a long time.
Okay, so this gentleman just put his up, and the other one was an existing use?
He put his up. What he's saying is entirely true. There is about a 7 or 8 foot area of his own property off of the edge of the cul-de-sac to the spillway property. His property, I don't know if you saw the aerial view through the GIS, but it almost fingers out around the edge of the cul-de-sac.
And the two properties kind of meet, right?
Yes.
Right there? Yeah.
So there is no public way to get through to the spillway. If
Okay.
anybody were to do that, technically, they would be trespassing on his property, if so marked. But
So.
it is a front yard fence. This board has been pretty against front yard fencing over the years. There's only a couple in town that I'm aware of that were approved by this board, depending on circumstance. The reason it's here is because it is a special circumstance. It was denied by my department. It was installed before he applied. Those are all things, obviously, for you to consider, and the board has to make the decision on whether or not it can go forward with.
One other quick question about that, and I'm going to be going a little off topic here, but why is this coming to us and not the ZBA?
Fence ordinance does not go to the ZBA. The appeal is through the township board. All fence ordinance denials can be appealed through the township board.
Okay.
It's not part of the zoning, the planning zoning ordinance.
But every other community goes to ZBA.
We're going to look at going through the ZBA, that is correct.
Okay,
But right now, it comes to the township board.
and that's fine, yeah.
I've got one more thing, if I could say it or that. I was going to put up the fence on a Friday, so I went down and I got the permit, or, put a request in for the permit. And I go out of town from Monday morning at 4 o'clock in the morning till Friday night at 8 o'clock at night. I go to Grand Rapids, and I'm out of town for work. So I went ahead and I put it up Saturday. I went down Friday, then I went ahead and put it up Saturday because I had to leave to go out of town Monday. So I didn't get the okay to put it up, but I went down Friday and paid my $50 to put up the fence. They came out Monday morning, and I guess it didn't make it to the desk yet before they came out to see that I did put in an application for the fence on Friday, and I put it up, the fence, on Saturday.
Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact, should the fence be there or not?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer?
He kind of answered it, but I
She did too.
I just wanted to know, what was the date? Then you said, was that the 7th then of June that you put it up?
Well, I came down here on a Friday and gave my $50, and I put it up Saturday.
But do you know which Friday that was? Because there's the letter, the
Okay,
denial
here it
is
is,
on the
right here.
14th.
This is date the 17th, so that was on a Monday, so the 15th I came down here, would be a Friday, right?
No, that's a Saturday, so you would have come on the 14th.
The 14th.
Well, I
yes.
know, but this was mailed on the 14th, so you had to have done it prior to that.
Yeah.
But I just wondered how far in advance you had done it before this letter went out. But it looks like about a week.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, once somebody applies for a permit, that does not give them permission to go forward with that until the approval is granted. That's the purpose of our fence permits.
Correct.
Is so we can review the location. I mean, whether you applied on a Friday or Monday is irrelevant. The approval was never granted. It still hasn't been granted, and that's why we're at this board meeting to decide whether or not that approval will be granted.
No, we compromised.
Thank you. Mr. Keys?
Yeah, mine was just a question, whether that's to the supervisor, to Mr. Dolan. Do we have the power to send it to the zoning board? That's something that this board wanted to do?
No. The ordinance as is drafted, and it's been drafted, and in that same state for many years, provides that appeals on the part of the fence ordinance go directly to the township board. Now, obviously, you have the power, if you so choose, legislatively to amend the ordinance, but that's how it's been.
Exactly.
Thank you. That was it.
Mrs. West, you were next?
No, I didn't have any.
Mr. Gillihan?
Okay. So, I'm sorry, Mr., tell me your name again.
Gallagher.
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 Okay. So, Mr. Gallagher, you've lived there for many years, right? How many
Well,
years?
7 years.
7 years.
It'll be 8 in
Okay.
December.
And so then you just put the fence up this year.
Yes.
What was what was the reason? Why did you believe that a fence needed to go up?
To keep people from throwing stuff in there, crossing over my property.
So,
And-
I mean, I know that in the springtime, every year I go out. I live on a street and I'm not adjacent to woodland areas or anything like that, but
Oh.
I go out in front of my, street and pick up stuff all the time, It's a matter of, stuff
Right.
happens. And
Right.
we all sort of have that, cleanup area. So it was to keep stuff off. What's an example of the stuff that you needed to keep off? Like, what are the,
Leaves, branches, trash,
okay, well,
bottles.
leaves and branches can't be.
Well,
the reason
truckloads
why
you
we
can.
put
A dump
fence up.
truck load,
But you knew 7 years ago you were moving next to a kind of woodland area, and the fence is keeping out leaves and
From
branches
people
and things
throwing
like
it
that?
in there, yes.
People
yes.
throwing it.
People throwing their trash, people bring their trash, their
Oh, they're bringing the
shrubs.
leaves.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I don't know, people
Saying they're dumping.
Got
bring
it.
it down there. That's their dumping spot. And
Okay.
it has been, I'm sure, for years, and that's probably what some people are complaining about. And I don't really like to go out there. I love deer. They're in my yard every day, every night, during the day and night. And that doesn't keep anything out of, it's only 50 feet.
Your across the street neighbor had a fence.
Has a
Does-
fence.
Does have a fence.
Has a privacy fence, picket fence, exactly like mine.
We're not going to talk from the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
Okay. You can, but you cannot talk from the audience. Okay.
You can see in the pictures or whatever.
You really can't. That's my
Well, no, because
frustration
it's-
here. I'm not
it's covered
seeing
by,
a lot of,
It's covered by foliage and everything, and these bushes are out into the drive, and I cleaned all that up and got rid of that, so the trucks can come through there too.
that's not a
can we
part of the
see that?
package
Yeah.
that
Can we see that?
we're seeing in front of us, so.
Thanks. We didn't get that. Okay.
See, this is my property. See, it was all the way out to here, all the debris. And then there was a
The
little
only one who
area.
can hear you is
Yeah,
Mrs.
yeah.
Meltzer. You
Yeah,
might
there.
want to go back and talk up there.
Anyway, I cleaned up the area, and I put up a fence so nobody could throw their stuff there, basically. I mean, I got pictures of piles of stuff. It really doesn't do any justice, but there's a
we see
lot
all
of
the
stuff
photos?
in there.
Mr. Cannon? Can we see all
Here's the
photos?
poles here that had the,
Give
that had
us
the
a-
fence.
Some of the board members would like to see those, if you don't mind passing them down.
So this is the,
Pipes and rocks, and this is where they had the no trespassing.
Again, nobody can hear you.
There's the two poles there that they had the sign up, no dumping. And then they come and took it down.
yeah, I'm having trouble seeing the existing fence. I'm seeing the fence that you put up, but I'm not seeing the existing fence. The other struggle that I'm having here is that it's a property that's adjacent to the spillway. It's a public right-of-way. I get that the two lots sort of finger to the end of the cul-de-sac there, and they would be encroaching on your property. But the fact is, they no longer can see down to the spillway. And so if you're on a public walk, if you're on the public street, you're out for a walk, you get to see a fence, you no longer get to see that access to the property and those nature areas that are adjacent to the spillway, that quite frankly, the township in conjunction with the county and the federal government has spent like close to $3 million upgrading and doing things like habitat restoration and, things like that. So this is what I'm trying to reconcile.
Okay.
This is the, so I've got a fence that doesn't meet the requirements of the ordinance. I've got people blocked off from the view of the spillway in the natural areas. I've got a permit that's applied for but not approved. And do you see the frustration here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, behind that privacy fence is probably 60 foot of woods, and then you've got probably 300 yards or 200 yards to the spillway area.
Yeah, I mean,
spillway is
I can
not
Google
right
map it, but
there.
I can't get
Yeah.
the property lines, but I can envision them, quite frankly, because I've seen these
Yeah.
properties before off the Macomb GIS. For whatever reason, it's not downloading.
And I couldn't get a picture of the other fence that's there because of all, it's overgrown with all them bushes and trees that come out into the street.
Yeah.
That's on my.
Okay, hang on. Here, sir. See this right here? Is this yours house right here? Which one of these is
This
your
is why
home?
it should go to the ZBA.
That's your home right there? And where's the fence at? Because you don't see it now.
We can
The
take
fence is right along there.
Right here, and his goes from the middle of that, there's a telephone pole, his goes that way, and I put 50 feet up right there.
Okay.
So I would feel more comfortable with this if this was a fence like the neighbors. I mean, if I got to grant a variance, a picket fence versus a wall of a fence, they're two different things.
It's a privacy fence, exactly like mine. You just can't see it because it's
Okay.
overgrown. And I couldn't get a picture of it. Ted, you took one picture,
Do you
didn't
see,
you?
do you see this?
But you couldn't get a.
He says this is his home. This is where his is. This is
Fence right there.
I don't see all of these people.
So I cleaned up my area and
They must-
made it presentable and to keep the trash down and everything.
Fence right here.
No, I'm talking about the people in the audience.
Point of information, Mr. Cannon.
Projecting in the audience.
Mr. Miller, you informed us that there is no permit for the fence that we're comparing this to, correct? So this could be an illegal fence as well?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I may as well, I mean, if the purpose of the fence, number one, is not privacy, obviously it's not. This is not to screen the spillway from the public. I mean, the board may, I mean, you have the consideration at this point to mandate something less obscuring. I mean, you could, I mean, if the purpose is to keep people from throwing things out, throwing over a 4.5-foot cyclone fence is going to be difficult in that nature as well. And it also delivers that non-obscuring look that would allow for the foliage to show through that the neighbors are, I think, were looking for. And it still would be a variance because it's still a front yard fence, just a consideration.
Thank you.
Have you made contact with Public Works to try and have them clean it up at any time in the past?
Have any what thing?
Have you ever had any contact with Public Works to try and have them clean up their property in the past?
No, not really. I just been kind of taking care of it myself, just like the middle little island there. Nobody cuts that, nobody does that. I cut it, I trim the bushes, pick up all the branches and everything. Nobody ever cuts it. It's up to the 4 people on our street, and I'm the one that got elected to do it. The volunteer or whatever.
Sir?
Maybe we should separate.
I just have to reiterate, the trash he's talking about is over-exaggerated. We walk that cul-de-sac every week. We always look over there. It's always been an access for us to get to the spillway. That thing is 6 foot high. It's a wall. And people aren't throwing trash. They did once, they're not doing it anymore. There's natural deterioration of trees and limbs and all kinds of Mother Nature foliage in the area. And it used to be, it looks like a ditch. It was a county in the 50s, what was it called? Drain. The county used to come out and clean the drain all the way to where the spillway, where the Clinton River makes its bend. The point is that he's over-exaggerating this. If he has worried about, number 2, the little piece of property that is about this wide and about 10 feet back where he's got his fence. But he has no fence in his side yard except his backyard. If he's so worried about trespassing, well, why doesn't he have a fence by the side of his house facing the spillway? I could walk right through there, and he would never know it anyway. But nobody abuses that situation. He's over-exaggerating it, and we got to, and when Ted says, who's my neighbor, says there's only 4 or 5 houses to see the fence, there's 6 more houses have to look down Newcastle every day to see this wall. and it's taken that view away. And the trash isn't there anymore.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Mary Ann Day again. You know, the trash is being overblown. It should be noted, our neighborhood is known for walking. It's a place where people come. There's people walking all the time. The race in, I believe it's in April, or is it in May? There's a marathon. Our neighborhood is used for the marathon. I mean, it's a very beautiful, friendly, safe neighborhood.
Does the marathon cut through the property that he's
No.
referring to? Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
And the cul-de-sac he's referring to is very small. We live right across the street from Asbury Park, which is larger. We go out anytime we have to and pick up any trash that the walkers may leave, or that anything. At one time, we had a commercial grass cutter throwing his grass clippings into Asbury Park, into the ditch. Well, we put a stop to it. We talked to the homeowner. Did you know this is happening? Oh, my God. No, I didn't know. I'll talk to the grass cutter. The grass cutter was fired. There are remedies to problems that you don't have to build a wall to solve. I mean, that property was at one time posted no dumping by order of Anthony Morocco. Maybe it could be posted no dumping by order of Candace Miller. You know who does dump the garbage, and if people are walking through in hoods, this is news to me. Somebody should really call the police should sit out there and watch this. I don't really, I've never seen it. Let me just say that. But there's also, remedies. If you know who's dumping the trash, call. I'm sure it's illegal. Have them ticketed. Put a stop to it. You don't have to build a wall. You don't have to ruin the neighborhood because you have to pick up trash 3 times a year. We pick up trash whenever it's necessary, and it's often. We trim trees. We rake. We do whatever needs to be done to keep Asbury Park beautiful. That's all. There are remedies, that's all.
What is the size of the fence that comes the other direction that's overgrown?
6 foot.
Same as yours?
Oh, can I add to that, too? The fencing that is up, the reason nobody can see it is it's cribbing fence. Like a corn crib, an old-fashioned corn crib with the red slats and chicken wire. That's what it is. That's the fence that's up.
Thank you.
Hooked up next to his. It's,
Mr. Pearl?
and you don't even see it because of all the nature.
Well,
And
because
it's
it's
thin,
overgrown.
it's airy,
I'd support that.
that's all.
Mr. Pearl?
Yeah. Mr. Miller, may I ask, Mr. Chairman, may I ask, what kind of fence do you recommend?
I think with the controversy outstanding, I think some sort of non-obscuring fence would be, if you so choose to forego the front yard requirement, a non-obscuring fence would probably be the way to go. It would serve the purpose he's looking for, which is to keep people from dumping, allow them to go to the 4.5-foot height, which is allowed by ordinance for a non-obscuring fence.
So he could leave the posts up, but he'd have to take the stockade down.
I mean, it depends on how he wants to attach, what he wants to attach to. I mean, again,
And it could be chicken wire. Something to stop them
Let's hope
from
not.
throwing things at it, but I'm concerned about obstruction of the
chicken,
view.
yeah, I mean, chicken wire, I mean, obviously, it's not something that we've allowed as a permissible.
but whatever
I mean, but
fence
like
That's
a chain
another
link
item on the
or
agenda.
A wrought iron, aluminum, open face, something non-obscuring. Again, I'll leave that to the board to decide
You know,
beyond.
there's no question there's a problem with dumping, but it isn't just here. Anyone that's trying to build in every community probably finds that people fill their dumpsters up. Commercial businesses find out that people fill their dumpsters up. You end up paying for additional costs to have everything removed. It's a constant battle. So I understand where you're coming from, but it's not just you. It's everybody finds this problem businesses that are trying to operate find their dumpsters filled all the time with people in the middle of the night just dump things, and they throw mattresses all over that you have to pay to have hauled away. The other side of the coin is that we really don't want to set up where we allow people to enclose natural resources like this to obstruct the view. What's the length of this?
Approximately 50 feet.
50 feet. Do you feel that 50 feet's needed to keep people from, could it be reduced at all?
I could see, I mean, starting from the middle of that cul-de-sac, working its way out, I mean, it's a reasonable length. I have no, I mean, if it's going to be allowed there at all, 50 feet's not going to be a big deal. To get from center of cul-de-sac to the edge of where the roadway would terminate is probably at least 25. So it's really only going another 2 or 3 panels beyond that into.
So chain
towards
link
his
is
yard.
what you're looking at?
I'm chain link, aluminum, 4-inch pickets, something of that nature. The other non-obscurings we've allowed would be like picket style. I mean, 4.5-foot max height.
I'd be okay with that as a compromise. It would take, and also ask the county to put up a no dumping sign in that area.
Mr.
So
Cannon?
I'll move that
Mr.
we approve the 50-foot fence variance as long as it's non-obstruction material?
Non-obscuring. And also,
Non-obscuring.
he is permitted, it is his property. He would be permitted to put up a small no dumping sign similar to a no trespassing sign. I mean, that is his right. It is his property.
So that's my motion. if
Okay,
there's any
before
support.
we get a support, Mr. Dolan?
Yeah, I would suggest, as a restatement of that, Mr. Pearl, that the obscuring material be subject to inspection and approval by Mr. Miller
Prior to
prior to
installing.
installation. As part
Prior
of your
to
motion.
That's part of my motion, too.
Is there a second?
Support.
Supported by Mr. Gilliam?
Can we,
Ask one quick question.
Yes.
To Barry and Jack, would it behoove us to also include in the motion, part of what the gentleman is looking to do is make sure there's no dumping there. However, if the neighbor across the cul-de-sac, if that fence all of a sudden were to disappear in a month, for some reason they wanted to take it down, now you still have dumping. So do we want to make it subject to if the neighbors take down their fence, then his would be out of compliance? Is that something we can even do, or would we want to look at
I
that?
don't think it's necessary. I mean, if the neighbor takes down their fence, that's their right, it's their property.
Right.
What's there has probably been there I mean, you're talking probably 40 years. It's that type of fence that used to enclose properties. I mean, from what she described, that's what, I mean, the old farmlands used to have similar type fences. You used to get the old red slatted woods. I know exactly what she's talking about. If they took it down and wanted to replace it, they'd have to go through the same process that we're dealing with right now, because it would be a new permit subject to current standards.
Well, my question was if they decided to take their fence down. Now we have one fence sitting out there. I mean, part of the reason why I'm supporting Mr. Pearl's motion is that the neighbors have a fence. You know, where's the equity there, you know? So I guess that's to you and to Jack, if we can even include that as part of the motion, or if that can be amended to the motion.
I know what you're talking about.
The only concern I have is that, if I may respond, Mr. Chairman, once this investment is made into the fence, which in some respects is already there, the actions of another property owner, who, as Mr. Miller pointed out, this property owner doesn't control, could result in essentially, the loss of a valuable installation on his part. I think it's a little draconian for us to require it to be taken out if something he has
If another
no
one were to be
control
taken out on another property? Yeah,
occurs.
all right.
I think a fence like this in the future will be covered with plenty of foliage, and you won't see it even.
I agree. You understand what the motion is? You're okay? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
No.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. Melser, yes. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the applicant would only have to change his on his application, the type of fence that he's applied for. Right now, he has applied for a 6-foot obscuring. He could contact me, and we could change the type of fencing right on the application and get him a permit within the next couple
So
days.
contact the building department tomorrow with Mr. Miller, not too early in the morning because they're busy in the morning getting things going, but like mid-morning.
Well, see, I work in Grand Rapids, and I took off today because I leave at 4 o'clock in the morning Monday, and I got to leave in the morning.
You don't have to do it tomorrow.
Okay,
Do it at your convenience.
okay.
A phone call.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I can give him one of my business cards. He can email me the type of
Right.
fence he wants to do, and I'll get it. You said you had left a check with my department, is that correct?
$50?
Well, then
Yes.
that'll cover the cost of the permit. We'll process it once you tell me the type of permit, and we'll mail it out to you. You won't even have to come in.
Okay. And how tall is that fence going to be now?
4 foot 6 inches maximum,
4'6".
and you tell me what type you want. Again, it could be the aluminum picket or chain link.
It's got to be see-through.
Correct.
Good
So
question.
you just let me know what type, and I can get that permit process for you.
Okay.
Short?
Yeah, very short.
Can I just cut it down and take every other slat off? The fence is already up.
Meet with Mr. Miller.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Keys has one last quick question for Mr. Miller.
Mr. Miller, how long does he have to take the fence that's currently up down? What is that timeline?
I mean, he's in violation right now. The violation is outstanding pending the result of this board meeting. The board can give him a time frame. At this point, we would go through typical procedure, which would be 10 days for second notice, 10-day letter, and then court hearing.
That gives him
I'd
time.
prefer- I mean, that'd be 20 days. I mean, we can give him a 30-day period. I mean, if that's reasonable to remove what's there. And then he can work on reinstallation once a permit is in place.
But it's not required a part of the motion. We already have a process in place that can
That's
go
correct.
through that. Okay.
Thank you.
So how many days did I get? At least 10?
Well,
You can work with
you
Barry.
get 10 days with Mr. Miller, then you're going to get a violation, then you
Okay.
get X amount of days by state
Okay.
statute. There is a process, but you don't want to wait too long,
Okay.
okay?
Well, I can take it down.
Well, you don't have to take it down. Work with Mr. Miller. He's easy to work with.
He will have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, introduction of applicants for Ethics Board.
Dear board members, there are 3 terms on the Ethics Board, 1, 2, and 3-year terms of office respectively, beginning on a date established by the board. Please note that these appointments fall under the jurisdiction of the Township Supervisor and is subject to approval by the Township Board. Mr. Daniel Mayer, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Ms. Stephanie Garza, Ms. Carrie Gilchrist, Mr. Jared Maynard, Mr. Scott Gotti, Mr. Joe Miko, and Ms. Marge Rama have submitted their applications for appointment, which are attached for your review. No other applications were received. Per the policy guidelines, an invitation has been extended to all applicants to attend the July 15, 2019 board meeting. They will each be provided an opportunity to introduce themselves to the Board of Trustees, whereby each being given a 3-minute time limit in which to do so. Sincerely, Stephanie Middlestead, Administrative Assistant. And then another comment, Mr. Cannon, I did receive a notice by Mr. Jared Maynard, who rescinded his request to be on this and
Thank
be
you.
considered.
So the first applicant, Mr. Dan Maher, indicated he's out of town and would not be here this evening. He has sent his bio for the board to take a look at. Mrs. Stephanie Garza, is she here this evening? You're welcome to the podium for 3 minutes to tell us who you are.
Good evening. My name is, can y'all hear me? My name is Stephanie Garza. I'm recently moved here from South Texas. I moved here to complete my master's degree at the University of Madonna in Livonia. I completed that this year in June, graduated, and I took a job with the Michigan Humane Society as a statewide agent, which entails animal cruelty investigations throughout the state of Michigan. We also teach law enforcement and animal control throughout the state of Michigan on how to handle animal cruelty cases, hoarding cases. We train them how to use the proper, tools like a catch pole. I've been trying to get back into the city. I wanted to see this, I moved here, I chose Clinton Township. I heard great things about the city from a lot of my coworkers. So I thought Clinton Township would be a great place to raise my family. I'm married with 2 stepchildren, both in college right now, in Texas. So I wanted them, once they graduate, they want to come move up here with me, and we want to continue to have our family here in Clinton Township. So I wanted to be more involved with the city. I was heavily involved in Texas. I was a big brother, big sister mentor, which I currently am now here in the city of Detroit. I'm also part of the Boys and Girls Club of America. And I've also applied to be in Soroptimist, which empowers young women to better themselves through education, through being able to provide their families. So I thought this would be a good way for me to get to know the community that I have come to know for this past year that I really do truly love. It's a really great city. It's a lot different than being in Texas. I've enjoyed the winter. I've enjoyed part of the fall that we've said we've had. But in Texas, it's usually summer, summer, summer. So I am enjoying this little heat. It doesn't bother me like it does a lot of my coworkers. So that's pretty much, I've 17 years in the military. I will be retired in 3 years. I still serve in Texas. I fly usually once a month back and forth. I come from a law enforcement background. I needed a change of pace, change of scenery, so I thought getting into animal cruelty was what I wanted to do. It's what my background is in college. So it's pretty much about me.
Thank you for getting involved, and thank you for applying.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Carrie Gilchrist?
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Dr. Carrie Gilchrist. I am a full-time staff member at Oakland University as a public speaker, providing information to students and families in the Tri-County area about financial aid and college readiness. I'm also a small business owner in the area, and I've lived in Clinton Township since I moved here in high school, with the exception of when I went away to college. I'm eager to get involved more in local events and local government, and so I would be pleased to serve on the commission. Thank you.
Thank you again for applying. We appreciate that. Mr. Scott Gotti?
Good evening. My name is Scott Gotti. I've been a resident of Clinton Township for approximately 25 years. Married, 2 children. We raised our children here in Clinton Township. I received a Juris Doctor from Wayne State Law School in 1995. I've been a member of the State Bar since 1996. I'm a nearly 28-year law enforcement veteran. Last 16 and a half years as an executive administrator, approximately 8 years as a commander, and another about 8.5 years as a deputy chief, which is my current rank. I have had assignments throughout my career ranging from SWAT team commander to detective to department legal advisor. During the course of my career, I've had occasion to draft, review, analyze everything from legal briefs to county ordinances, state statutes, and department policy. I come here with no agenda other than to serve if the board feels that my background and experience would be helpful in interpreting the code as it exists based on whatever facts may come before it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for applying. Mr. Joe Miko is not available this evening. Ms. Mardrama?
Board members, I'm sure you remember me. I am a resident of Clinton Township for 43 years, an employee for 25 years, starting out back in the recording secretary to election coordinator to deputy clerk. I am now retired. Now, I volunteer with Clinton Township Goodfellows and the American Cancer Society, and would love now that I have the time to serve on a committee. So I thank you for considering me.
Thank you, Mrs. Rama. And I believe that's all of our applicants. Did I miss anyone? Okay, a motion to receive and file is in order. Supported by Mr. Keys. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl.
Yes.
Mr. Keys.
Yes.
Mrs. West.
Yes.
Mr. Cannon.
Yes,
Mr. Argona.
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam.
Yes.
Mrs. Melser, yes, motion passes.
thank you. And item 3, and thank you all for coming this evening. I know it's difficult in July. Request to revert property back to former industrial zoning I-2 designation.
Dear Ms. Meltzer and Board of Trustees, please note that I represent M&E Acquisitions LLC, the owner of the above referenced property. Pursuant to Michigan Statute MCL 125.345, Parent 2, and Paragraph 2 of the attached conditional zoning agreement, I'm kindly requesting at this time that the subject property revert back to its former industrial I-2 zoning designation. The Township Board under the CZA, Paragraph 2, has the right to revoke the B3 zoning and revert the property back to its I-2 zoning designation. The statute below allows for reversion of the conditions for rezoning and are not timely satisfied.
This is not a.
For those that are not timely satisfied or extended. Michigan Compiled Laws 125.3405, Parent 2, states in relevant part, in approving the conditions under subsection 1, the local unit of government may establish a time period during which the conditions apply to the land except for an extension under subsection 4. If the conditions are not satisfied within the time specified under this subsection, the land shall revert to its former zoning classification. Reverting back to the I-2 designation will allow my client to proceed with its proposed site plan to include the entire site, and which will provide new construction and cleaning up at the site. All trucks that are on the site will be parked in the back of the property or behind the on-site buildings. The site can be finalized and submitted to the township for its formal review process in short order once the property reverts to I-2 zoning. Please let me know at your earliest if there is anything further you need from my client or myself. I would ask at this time, to be taken under consideration and placed on the next available Township Board agenda for review and decision on the I-2 zoning reversion. Very truly yours, Tom Collis.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. Tom Callis. I represent M&E Acquisitions, LLC. My address is 31350 Telegraph Road, Suite 201, Bingham Farms, Michigan 48025. My client purchased the property. He is the fee simple owner. A recorded warranty deed was provided to Mr. Thompson from my office. The property was purchased in 2015. It was previously purchased pursuant to land contract, paid off in 2015, and a warranty deed was received by my client. This property was initially zoned in I-2 industrial, as is most of the property surrounding it and abutting it. It's master plan for industrial. It's an industrial area. The Township Board in June of 2007 rezoned this property pursuant to conditional zoning application and agreement from its I-2 industrial district to a B3 commercial district. The purpose of the rezoning was to allow SL Properties, which was Mr. Mike Larco at the time, to develop and construct 2 commercial retail buildings on the site under the B3 zoning. The conditional zoning agreement, which was also submitted in paragraph 2, indicates that if the site plan is not approved within a 3-year period of the agreement, then the Township Board does have the authority to revoke the B3 zoning, and it reverts back to its I-2 industrial zoning district. The statute also gives you that authority, and it arguably, or there could be an argument that, it automatically revokes back to its prior zoning under the statute without any board consideration or decision. But we are here in front of the board this evening, and I am asking the board to consider and approve reversion of the zoning back to I-2 from its current B3. And what that will do is allow my client to come in and develop the site, submit a site plan. Ron Chiesa, his architect, has a site plan ready to go. It's ready for submittal. It'll be an improvement to the site. It'll clean up the site. There'll be an additional building constructed. all the trucks. He has a trucking business, he's a common carrier. All the trucks I did submit a draft of the site plan, realizing this isn't a site plan hearing, but I did submit a draft so the board can have it at their disposal and can see what my client is proposing. In the event it does revert back to the I-2 zoning, they can proceed accordingly and in short order with submittal of the site plan for a formal review process. In fact, in light of the fact that Mr. Larco is no longer in the picture, my client does own the property now, has no intention to ever develop it as commercial, but would like to develop it under its current industrial zoning in that industrial district. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Otherwise, I would ask for the reversion back to the I-2 zoning designation. Thank you.
I understand that we have to do what you're requesting. Why did your client think they could just simply move in the middle of the night and put trucks down there like garbage? It was junk. It looked terrible. Why did your client do that?
This is a new client for me, so I can't answer what he did, but he's been parking there for 5 years.
And they kept getting worse and worse and worse.
And so this site plan is an action opportunity for the township.
It is, I agree.
Yeah, to clean up the site.
But why did he do that? Why do you think you can just move in on Groesbeck and make that place look like it did?
What his thought process was, I don't know, other than what he's advised me is he was given permission to park his truck.
He was not given permission. I can tell you that for a fact.
I wouldn't dispute that. I'm not disputing you, but I wasn't
We want
involved.
the property cleaned up.
Yes,
And I understand we have to do what you're requesting.
right.
But why are we going to allow companies like the one you represent to come in and just jump in on a piece of property and do whatever that they want?
No, I agree. I don't disagree, but this is your opportunity to clean up the site.
It is.
And have it meet the ordinance.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Cannon. I spoke with Mr. Dolan, and he indicated we had no choice. But I agree with Mr. Cannon's sentiments. You can't just operate there like...
And not just that company, there's others. And I'll tell you what, our building department is out there aggressively going after, and they went after your client too.
Sure.
Getting those people not to do what they're doing, because we don't want that. No matter what part of our community.
I don't disagree.
Mr. Gilliam?
I didn't raise my hand, sir.
Mr. Pearl? We're informed by our attorney we have to do what the request is. So is there a motion to do that? I'll make that motion. And I'm directing our planning director to make sure we get the most quality product out of that site possible.
Support.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
I'm not mad at you, sir.
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you.
I'm mad that in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, things changed over there.
He's been advised he has to clean up the site.
Thank you.
I did look at a draft of the site plan. It does look, nice.
Good.
And of course, he'll have to meet the I-2 ordinance.
Work with our planning director, please.
No problem.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Okay, we've moved the request for the approval of the RFP for the strategic plan up to this item.
4. Item 4. So if you want to come on up. We have met in Budget Ways and Means to discuss the issue of strategic planning facilitation and help with that. And if Liz Vogel, our deputy supervisor, would like to continue with the explanation, that'd be great.
Well, we should start back. We talked about this at the State of the Township. The board has been on board all along. We've met with your committee, Mrs. Meltzer,
Budget Ways and Means.
a number of times. We've had input from board members. We can continue to have input. I think we're all in agreement that we want to move ahead with this. I've asked Liz Vogel, my deputy, to coordinate the activities and to continue to coordinate the activities, and she's here to either answer questions or give another brief summary. Liz, you took input from all the members of the committee, and
Absolutely.
you incorporated everything possible?
It was directed to Budget Ways and Means, so I started researching RFPs from other local communities in Michigan and surrounding states that have done similar strategic planning projects. I gave those drafts to the committee, and then I drafted an initial draft that was more specific, very specific to Clinton Township and what we're looking for. I'd like to actually thank our planning director and our communications director. They were really thorough in helping me really make it a beautiful, unique RFP that stands out for Clinton Township. We took it back to Budget Ways and Means, and I incorporated all the suggestions that came out of that meeting. And then it was also sent out to the board for further suggestions and refinement with a deadline of July 3rd to get me that feedback. So you're seeing the final results of all the feedback that we received both in the committee meetings and from other staff members.
We are going to incorporate as many people as we possibly can from the community, board members, business owners, residents. We want a cross-sampling of the community. We want input. When you go through Sterling Heights at Dodge Park and Utica Road, you understand why this is so important to us. Mr. Callahan?
So, as a member of the Budget Ways and Means Committee, I appreciate having the opportunity to provide some input on this plan. It was provided to me first in the form of, here's what other communities are doing, then in the form of, let's get together, let's put something on paper, and then let's bring it back and sort of vet the suggestions and things like that. And so I was pleased to have some input. As you know, one of the things that I lent to this is that I've been through similar things as Ms. Vogel has on behalf of the library network. I think that you created and sort of spearheaded this strategic planning, where do we want to be? And I participated at the county level in a similar endeavor that really focused on what do we do well? How do we play upon our strengths? How do we improve the things that we need to improve that are going to be the targets in the future? So if we don't do them well, but we know that it's part of the future and we need to do them well, we need to focus on how do we venture into that area, and then sort of play on the strengths. And so I think this is a good process, but there's a lot of levels of overlay here. And there's the township master plan. There's some of the things that we talked about were like placemaking and corridor development and economic development and neighborhood improvement. Later on the agenda, we're going to talk about a beautification committee. So there's all these different sort of interwoven things here, and it's good to see, I think, us moving in the direction of recognizing that as we become an older community, we need to figure out how we're no longer we have neighborhoods that are 70 years old. Our newer neighborhoods are becoming 20 to 30 years old. And so as a result of that, how do we make Clinton Township the place that people want to be? I think we have a central location within the county. But you can sort of demonstrate this by looking at the tax rates. You can say that everything to the north of us is dramatically less, just what it takes to fund the municipality. Everything to the south of us is dramatically more than we are. And we've got the infrastructure challenges coming on. We've done everything we can to address the environmental issues. I was pleased, Mr. Cannon, when you announced that you were going to develop, and I don't know if you want this as part of the motion or if you're still moving in that direction, but we need somebody to review all these applications as they come back, right? And so you had indicated you're putting a committee together to review the companies that bid on this work, review those, and then
I'm fine with
bring
sending
some.
it to the Ways and Means Committee.
Okay.
We all want the same.
Right. So, yeah, so you had indicated that, you know, Ms. Vogel, myself,
That would be.
the planning director and the communications director, we're going to
All would be part of
Sure.
that Ways and
Look at-
Means Committee.
Okay. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but again, there's a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of
And so we
moving
have a
parts.
lot of coordination, so I think it's good to get a company hired that can provide us, we all have our own feelings about what we feel about Clinton Township. I grew up here, it's part of who I am, it's part of my identity, but to get that outsider's viewpoint as well is, I think, very effective. So I see this as a value-added process, and I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to sort of get a little philosophical here and, talk about this, but this is an important step, and it's,
very important
I think it's well overdue, and it's good to see a master plan in effect now, and now moving in this area of having a strategic plan
Master
as well.
plan, as well as the recreation master plan, will be integral in what we're talking about here. But we need someone to coordinate input from the community.
Mr. Cannon, can I just add?
Yes.
At the meeting, one of the questions that I asked the committee that was there, and there was probably 8 of us, 8 to 10 of us there, what is the number one asset you believe that Clinton, hosts? And every single one of us had a different perspective and a different comment as to what we thought was our greatest asset. And I think that lends itself to the importance of having a company come in with the experience and with that background. And I really appreciate the effort you put into creating that RFP. It is not easy to create an RFP. I know I've done so myself, and it takes a lot of back and forth and consulting with the attorneys. And so I appreciate the work you've done on this, Liz, and I think the committee definitely is moving in the right direction.
Well, an
So thank
RFP
you.
that we can all agree to.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, a motion is,
So moved to use this request for proposal.
Second.
supported by Mrs. Meltzer. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl.
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Mrs. West.
Yes.
Mr. Keys.
Yes.
Mr. Cannon.
Yes,
Mr. Aragona.
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam.
Yes.
Motion passes.
thank you. Item 4 has been deleted. Item 5, request to attend structural collapse training by the deputy fire chief.
This is a Mooser Building Collapse Tech for the fire department in the amount of $1,910.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Support?
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Aragona.
Yes.
Mr. Keys.
Yes.
Mrs. West.
Yes.
Mr. Pearl.
Yes.
Mr. Cannon.
Yes,
Mr. Gilliam.
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Motion passes.
thank you. And item 6,
Item 6 is the
adoption of Township Ordinance 457, regulating and requiring permits for the keeping of chickens. Now, Mr. Dolan,
Yes, sir.
I know that I called you earlier and you said you would not chicken out on this. But tell us why we need this chicken ordinance, because we didn't just put this on the agenda. There's a reason. Mr. Dolan?
Well, actually, what's occurred is there's been the emergence of and a growing sentiment and expansion of people in residential areas raising chickens for purposes of personal consumption of the eggs that they produce. And what's happened actually, Mr. Cannon, is that many of the larger communities throughout Michigan have now adopted ordinances that relate to this. The second largest township to us, behind us, Canton Township, has such an ordinance. Also, large cities, the city of Grand Rapids, the city of Lansing, the city of Dearborn, and the city of Warren have all adopted such ordinances. In Macomb County itself, we have the city of Centerline, the city of East Point, the city of Roseville, and the city of Warren, all with such ordinances. And in this instance, this is actually the meeting where we're considering adoption. It was previously introduced. We presented an ordinance which has essentially, under general requirements, 15 different explicit sections to control the raising of chickens. And some of the most important ones is that you're limited only to 4 hens. You can't have any roosters that crow. And there are restrictions with regard to the location and height of the coop, the nature of its construction, the measures that are intended to prevent any rodent harborage, and measures that relate to the location and waiving location requirements with the input of adjoining properties. So for some years now, communities have dealt with the raising of chickens in residential areas. We're now at a point where we've had the opportunity to see how it's been done, in some respects what's worked and what hasn't, and now this ordinance is presented with these enforcement provisions within it. Also, as you know from the Budget Ways and Means meeting, Mr. Miller is extremely familiar with these processes and is in a position, I think, where both he's had input on the construction of the ordinance and feels that enforcement will be able to be accomplished with the ordinance as presented.
Thank you. And we have had some lawsuits that we have not prevailed on that require us to do something. Mr. Keys?
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. I'd like to point out that Mr. Dolan is correct, that there are a lot of provisions within this ordinance that allow for the township and specifically the building department to make sure that the upkeep on these chicken coops are kept up and don't create problems. And just to point out a couple, we have the option that if there are 3 complaints that are made, that permit can be revoked, but then also that individual will no longer be able to get a permit for the chicken coop. Is that correct, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, that is correct. It would have to be not just complaints, verified complaints by the building department.
And I appreciate that designation, that verified complaints, because we're trusting the building department who knows the ordinance and has an understanding of what the township is looking for, that goes out there and verifies these, instead of pitting neighbor against neighbor type of actions. And so what I'd like the board to consider is actually removing the second sentence out of section 610.05, keeping chickens, letter A. It reads, "No permit shall be issued to a person and no chickens shall be allowed to be kept unless the owners of all residentially zoned adjacent properties as defined below consent in writing." I feel that this is a burden that's far above and beyond what we need to do here in Clinton Township. These permits are going to expire every 3 years, which means we're going to have the ability to keep up on these chicken coops and make sure that they're being maintained. And the residents still have the tools of the ordinance department to make sure that if there are issues, they can issue the 3 complaints and make sure that after they're verified by a building department employee, that we are shutting down anyone who isn't maintaining these facilities. And so I just want to open that up for discussion and see if board members are willing to support me in that.
This is the first I've heard of that. So right now, I'm not in favor of that, but I would be glad to talk about it at a later date if we're finding that people can't get their chickens because the neighbors are not compliant. If I had a next-door neighbor who wanted chickens, I would probably say yes, because I have a daughter who has chickens. But not everybody knows what they do, and I think part of the ordinance is giving the neighborhood an opportunity to weigh in on whether they want chickens next door to them.
Can I just respond to that?
Sure.
I appreciate that, and I think you're correct. And that's one of my concerns, is that what I've found in this process, people like yourself who have a family member that have chickens, Mr. Miller and I have been able to have really good discussions, and I've learned a lot more because of his expertise. My fear is that people that don't know about chickens will be the ones that dictate whether or not someone can have that in their yard. And I don't think that's right. I think it should be our building department. I think that our building department has the ability and the tools with this ordinance to determine if it's appropriate or not for the property, rather than relying on someone who may not have the experience that you, Mr. Miller, and others have with chickens to know that they are safe to be in the community as long as they're maintained in the correct way.
But I should tell you that my daughter lives on a farm, so chickens are a part of the farm. Mr. Pearl?
Yeah, we had a case a while ago before the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding chickens, and it was quite controversial. And the problem was that 3 or 4 of the neighbors backed up to the property. So they were on the side yard, and they all objected to it. So the people still have it. The problem is, at what point does it become their approval versus a complaint? So do you let them put it up, and then they get complaints, or do you, as Mr. Keys is saying, don't ask for their permission, then you'll get the complaints the next week? So what's the best? Are they going to be able to, the kids you don't want the chickens too, as pets, and let's say you allow them to put it in without any approval from the neighbors, and then the neighbors start complaining, you know you're going to get 3 complaints from those people every week about it,
Not
because
well
they don't
maintained.
want it. So which is the best way to do it?
And Mr. Miller has so much extra time in his department, he can go out and check all those chicken complaints.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have chickens. When you decide that you're going that route to have chickens, there's a substantial investment in that. I mean, I have well over $1,000 into my coop. I mean, they're well cared for. My wife is adamant about that. But I mean, it just, it is an investment. So not getting those signatures up front and then coming back a year later, or 3 years later, saying, yeah, you know what, now you're out. You can't have a permit because you had too many complaints. I don't know that that's the right decision. I just, for that purpose, and I mean, it's an investment when you decide to go that route.
Mr. Keenan?
You don't live on a farm either, do you? But you live on a big piece of property.
I live in an agricultural slash estate district on 3 acres, so I meet all the requirements in my area.
Mr. Keys?
Yeah, and I appreciate all those points, and I don't disagree with any of them. And I don't disagree with the fact that people should go and talk to their neighbors. Absolutely, you should go and knock on your neighbor's door and have a conversation. But if you're able to keep this chicken coop well-maintained to the point where your neighbors don't notice it and don't have any burden on their property, I just don't know that we need to put that burden when we already have the tools. And again, you're absolutely right, they're making a big investment, but that's their investment. And we're being upfront with that in Clinton Township. We're not saying that there's no hidden fees or hidden agenda here. We're saying that if you don't go to your neighbors and get permission and it turns out they don't like it, they're going to have an avenue to complain. And if they get 3 verified complaints, so that way it's not someone who maybe doesn't know about the benefits of the chicken and is really just upset about the chicken in general. I don't want to give them the power to take this away from a resident. I really just want to leave that with this board and the building department, so that way they're verified.
Mr. Dolan, when you put this ordinance together, did you check with other communities to see what worked for them?
Yes, essentially, there are different approaches in different communities. I mean, I think that the reason for getting the approval beforehand has already been articulated. The idea is, you know, if you've got the approval beforehand, you know going in that there has been some acceptance of the process. As complaints come in later, then, you know, if they're verified, then it's obvious that what was expected, that the neighbors who consented to it didn't have their expectations fulfilled. You know, if those complaints are verified, then there's been a problem that has some substance to it. So I think that's why it was put together the way it was. Now, on the other hand, it's obviously going to be easier for someone who's keeping chickens. They don't have to go through the burden of trying to convince their neighbors. So, I mean, there is additional obstacles to getting the chicken harborage off the ground if you have to get your neighbor's consent. Could you run into someone who's arbitrary and capricious? Certainly. But, you know, I mean, obviously, those are the arguments I think are being fleshed out here as we discuss it.
Mr. Burrow, then we're going to go to the
Is there any
community.
provision, Mr. Dolan, thank you, is there any provision in this that the homeowner can appeal if their neighbors deny to the zoning board?
There is no provision in this. This is a regulatory ordinance, so we have not provided.
Can we add that if it was denied unreasonably, the zoning board could overrule that and allow it?
If you would so choose, we could do that.
That, I think, would be a compromise in that you don't know how many meetings we had over those chickens.
It would be a compromise.
And the kids holding the chickens sitting here and, you know, wanting to know how they can keep them. I wouldn't want people to invest in that and have their kids enjoy that, and the families, you know, involved in the expense and the enjoyment, and then find out later that the neighbors were all complaining. Let's get it up front and allow the zoning board to hear a case if the neighbors, you know, withhold it unreasonably.
I know my grandson ran down a chicken last night at my daughter's. It took a long time to catch that chicken. The chickens don't like to be held. I can tell you, they don't like to be held and pet.
Mr. Cannon?
Ma'am?
I'm
then-
sorry. Yeah, she can.
I have some comments as well.
I'm Irene Nye. I live at 39375 Drake in the township, and I've lived there for 40 years. And I have kept chickens. I had a small flock, as you've described, 4 hens, and I enjoyed their company. When you first pick up that fuzzy little chicken from the feed store, the farm outlet, or the mail order, however you go about procuring this chicken, you have to own that bird for 4 months before it lays an egg. During that 4-month time, you, believe it or not, develop a bond with that chicken. Chickens are a lot like dogs. They have personalities. They recognize their owners. They can come to their name when they're called. They're like dogs with feathers. I don't, currently, in this township, I don't have to ask my next-door neighbor if I can own a dog. I don't have to ask my next-door neighbor, can I own a cat, a guinea pig, a rabbit, or any other conventional animal. This is an unconventional pet, and I realize that. But I don't think that my neighbor should have the right to deny me that ability to own that chicken. I love the fact that you're requiring a permit. To me, a permit is like getting a license for a dog. It shows that the person is investing some level of responsibility in taking care of that animal. I love the fact that you have the requirements for no roosters, they're intrusive, and they're loud in the neighborhood. There's a lot of other good things within that ordinance. The one thing I disagree with is having to have that written consent of a neighbor. Everybody knows that every neighborhood has that one neighbor who believes it is their right to be intrusive on everything that everybody does in the neighborhood. I think you have a mechanism within this ordinance to correct possible violations, verified violations, and I think that that's substantive enough. I don't think that you should be punitive against somebody who could potentially be a very responsible owner of chickens. And I would hope that you would reconsider changing that part in the ordinance. Otherwise, I think the ordinance is great. I'm the quintessential lady who stands on the chair if she sees a rodent. I never saw a rodent at all when I had my chickens, never. That's because I kept them clean, just as I would a dog. If you had dog food outside, if you left dog droppings in your yard, you would have a rodent problem. Same as with a chicken, if you keep that food contained where it should be contained, if you keep that coop clean, you will not have a rodent problem. And those are that's probably the biggest fear that people have that don't know anything about chickens, is they're afraid of a rodent infestation, and I get that. I'd be the first one against chickens if that were across the board problem. So what I'm asking tonight is that you reconsider that part of the ordinance. And I also have a question about the coops themselves. I think it's under the sections, the general requirements, under section C, provision 6, it says, it makes a reference to the enclosures and the coop, that the coop is...
And all questions have to come through.
Oh, I'm sorry, that the coop is to be in an enclosure, that you can close the doors, prevent predators, that sort of thing. I'm having trouble visualizing that. Is that referencing to like putting a coop inside of like a shed or a garage or another accessory building? Is that what?
I don't believe that's the case. Barry.
No, I mean, it would be part of the enclosed area that they're permitted. They're not allowed to be a free range. They do have to be penned. And your overall size of the pen, I believe, was 100 square feet, and the coop itself would have to be part of that 100 square feet.
Okay, I just had a question. I didn't understand that part.
You elevate that up, the chickens can still use the area underneath. I'm sure, I mean, if you have a elevated coop, you understand that. But so they would still have 100 square feet of area to roam below their coop, which usually is substantially smaller.
And I want to thank the board for even considering this ordinance. There are a lot of communities that are moving that way. Ann Arbor is even one of them. They're one of the first communities that move that way, and I think everybody has at least a very good feeling about the progressiveness of Ann Arbor. So that being said, I hope that you'll support changing that one restriction in the ordinance.
So you've talked to Mr. Keeson about that?
I've talked to Mr. Keys. Over the years, I've talked to Mr. Sowerby when he was here.
I think I knocked on your door, right?
Yeah.
That's how we first met.
Yeah. So I usually, whenever I run across somebody, I bend their ear about it. In fact, I saw you at the gym not long ago, and I thought of approaching you, but I thought that was too intrusive.
Everybody else does.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I mean, if the board considers dropping that clause, I would still like the signatures on lots that are closer, or where houses are closer than the distance requirement. We have it in there, I believe, 2 times. The first time is on all properties, and then later on, there's another reference, I don't have it right in front of me, to properties that are less than the required distance to a single-family dwelling. I'd still like to keep that provision in there regarding that, because it's, if that gets into the smaller lots, and I think it's important that when you start developing these coops and putting the chickens on the smaller lots within the communities, that the neighbors should be informed prior to.
I'm in favor of the ordinance, and I'm in favor of possibly amending the ordinance, but I'm not in favor of doing it tonight. I'm in favor of figuring out what it is that Mr. Miller needs to enforce the ordinance without overburdening his staff. So I would entertain a motion to postpone for 2 weeks. And Mr. Dolan, can we do this because we've already published this?
Yeah, you can.
I don't want to have to republish and pay money to publish again, but I want to make sure that Mr. Miller and you, Mr. Thompson, are happy with what we come up with as a net result, as well as what you're interested in. I like chickens. I mean, I see them running around with my grandkids, so I have no problem with that. But on the other hand, they live on a farm, so there's nobody who complains about them out there.
I understand that.
I know it's controversial, no matter what you do with chickens. Some people are going to be happy, some people are
If I
going to be
may ask,
unhappy.
if you were going to, you would mention the smaller lots, would you actually designate what size lot that would be? So that there would be no,
I'm not ready to proceed.
I think what he's referring to, so you're aware, is if you look at the ordinance,
We don't have to pay money to
it's
publish
under,
again? That's fine.
it's on page
Just go to
3,
You still want to take
and
that?
in
I'm fine with that, too.
subsection 11 of the
I'm
general
fine with it.
requirements, which are under
Make a motion to that effect.
61005C.
I know
you look
Mr.
at-
Gilliam and Ms. Meltzer still has to speak on that, though.
And
11,
it's just going to be a long
what
history.
he's
about
talking
chickens.
about is the location of the.
You don't have.
oh, the 60-foot requirement?
60-foot, right.
Right, okay.
But I'll make
All right,
But I got to
we're
squat.
going to do 2 things.
Thank-
Mrs. Meltzer gets to speak, Mr. Gilliam gets to speak, and then we're going to have a motion to do something I hope appeals to most everyone. Mrs. Meltzer, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. I do agree with Mr. Keys and with Ms. Nye, and I also agree with Barry Miller, our building director. I think that he has kind of brought this all full circle and kind of addresses the concerns that we all have. I think you're right. I don't see why we would want to prolong something that, is really something the public wants, and it's a great quality of life attribution for our community overall. Of course, there are some people that are going to think differently than that, but overall, I do think it is a great opportunity for the residents. And again, to your point, Mrs. Nye, we don't have to consult when we purchase a dog, and dogs can be very loud and annoying at different times. So I see your point on that as well. So to appease all of the players, it seems to me that the recommendation that Mr. Miller makes, so that the area is less than the limit would be the way to go. And then he said what he wanted, and maybe we could make a motion
Make my motion.
to do that, where we actually eliminate the language as Mr. Keys suggested, and then also make sure there's language that identifies,
I thought his was a compromise.
permission or a written request for properties that are smaller and that designated size.
Mr. Gilliam?
So I'm feeling this compromise in the works, but I still think it's relevant. I did actually bring this issue up in the Budget Ways and Means Committee, and I think I referred to it as the egg tax. You have to sort of get permission from everybody. They're going to possibly want an egg or two in the process. But one of the issues that we dealt with, well, I guess, first let me go there, and through the chair to Mr. Miller, if somebody does complain, what then is the process for investigating that complaint?
It'd be the same process we use with all of our complaints. They would have to submit a complaint online. We would have to go in, verify whether or not the complaint is valid.
Okay.
If it is, we would issue a violation notice for correction. They correct it, that's still strike one. At that point, we can proceed with our typical procedure with regard to if they choose not to. I would say that you give them that first notice, that second notice is strike two. If we have to come out 3 times, strike 3, you've been revoked. And now
Okay.
we revoke you, we take you to court for removal of the chickens. and-
So a revocation of the permit happens just like it would with a permit for anything else that is done within the township, right?
Yes, if you don't meet building code requirements, you fail to do so, I guess it would be similar. in
Or the
that case.
requirements of this ordinance,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So you've laid out these requirements, and then, they have to be met. If they're not met, the permit could be revoked, and what would initiate that would be a complaint process, right?
Yeah, we would initiate it all through the complaint process, and then in the end, it does fall under the misdemeanor requirements if they fail to adhere to the revocation.
Sometimes these things have to go to court. What's the view of the court when you have an ordinance that requires them to sign, and they may sign, and then they say, wait a second, these folks aren't doing this correctly, and I'm a little bit concerned, and I have a complaint, and now you've got them signing their approval, then you've got a complaint from possibly the same person.
Well, their signature is irrelevant to the complaint process. The complaint process is black and white compared to the ordinance. If they're in violation of any of our ordinances regarding the coop, the odors, whatever that may be, we would verify that. It has nothing to do with whether or not the neighbors are only our conduit to let us know there is a problem out there. So the next door neighbor might say, you know what, I signed it, but this isn't what I signed up for. I mean, and they would contact us through the complaint process, online, over the counter, whatever that may be, to ask for an inspection on the property.
There was an agenda item earlier, and again, through the chair to you, about a fence and getting a fence approved. Did anybody need to go and get permission from all of the neighbors when they applied for the fence permit, or did they just need to comply with the ordinance?
Comply with the ordinance, or the appeal process is through this board. That's why they were here.
All right. So that's why I'm thinking there's a lot of validity in sort of what's happening here and the fact that we need to compromise on this, particularly getting signatures from everybody. You have a certain set of rights. You got to make sure you maintain an adherence to the ordinance, and you got to make sure that you're not encroaching or infringing on the rights of your neighbors. And when you do, then that triggers a process, and that process has to be fair. And so by making you go out on the onset and fill out all of the signatures from everybody ahead of time, I think is somewhat of a burden that's beyond where I think we can legally go or where we should go, perhaps.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Dolan, did you find other communities that did that, though? Required signatures from
Yes.
neighbors? Thank you. So that's the reason.
So there may be a
That's the reason that's
precedent.
before
I
us.
agree. Yep.
Mr. Keys, you have the floor to make a motion.
And so, Mr. Dolan, if you can help me out a little bit here, what I'd like to do is make a motion to amend this section to allow for a provision that gives the resident the right to appeal the neighbor's denial to the zoning board.
Okay.
I have no problem with that.
That could be inserted on, just so you're clear on it, if you look at page 2,
Mm-hmm.
in the third
Sentence.
line after the word issued, where that sentence ends, we can insert a provision that would establish that an appeal would be permitted to the zoning board of appeals. We'd put a timeline in, and I would say that we would make it within 14 days in writing. And they would then
That's a good compromise.
be able to utilize some of the standards that the ZBA uses when it considers a variance from the requirement.
So I'll make that motion to amend.
Is there a second?
Second.
I am in agreement with it. And that is a good compromise, because everybody always should have the right to appeal a denial.
Mr.
No matter
Chairman,
what.
are we striking from the record
No.
the need for the signature?
No.
No,
No.
no. But if
Just
they
the
don't get the
ability
signatures,
to
they can
appeal it
appeal.
through ZBA. Okay.
That's correct.
What I would further suggest, just so everybody's clear on it and understands what will be presented, is that we postpone for 2 weeks, and I'll present the ordinance with modification at that time.
Thank you.
Oh, so there's no,
Well, so you're exactly clear on the language as has been outlined.
I don't think there's any, I think we all agree.
Yeah, I don't think we
I
need to
think we're
postpone.
fine
I
to
think
move
we-
ahead.
Okay.
yeah. And who seconded that?
I did.
You-
Mrs. West. Okay, so we have, I think, a very good compromise. Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes,
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. also yes, motion passes.
thank you.
Now, do we need to pass it now
Yep.
as amended, or is that it?
We did.
We did.
Just
I
did
just
that.
made a motion to
We,
amend.
we amended it, now we need to do final adoption.
All right,
We did that.
motion to adopt finally.
So
No, no,
Motion
no.
to
I'm
adopt
saying-
is
Moved by Mr.
No,
Keys,
no,
supported by
I
Mr.
understand.
Aragona. Mr. Keys made the motion, supported by Mr. Aragona.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passes.
Now, the fee schedules.
Yes.
For those very expensive eggs you're growing out there.
Yes. I don't think you called me.
Item 7. And
didn't call you?
everybody says they're good eggs. I don't eat them, but my kids,
sorry.
everybody else loves them.
I'm so sorry.
All right, item 7, fee schedule.
It's hot in here.
It is
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Keys. Is there support?
Support.
Roll call.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes,
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passes.
thank you. Item 8, request to form a beautification committee.
Dear board members, I've been approached by community residents who have indicated that Clinton Township could benefit from a beautification commission. Many other communities in the surrounding areas have longstanding beautification commissions that have been instrumental in improving the aesthetics of business corridors and residential communities. Please see the attached backup, which provides several examples. Many communities give out awards to residents and businesses that have made significant improvements to their properties. This is a wonderful opportunity for Clinton Township to encourage beautification in the township. I recommend the Clinton Township form a 7-member beautification commission comprised of residents and business owners. In order to ensure that the commission receives support from the township, I recommend that the deputy supervisor and administrative assistant to the trustees be liaisons to the commission to ensure its success, as well as providing administrative support. Sincerely, Robert Cannon, Supervisor.
Okay, what this is not for residential. This is for business and industrial. At this time, it's for forming partnerships between those groups who may or may not have thought about keeping up their properties, who may not have thought that we cared about them keeping up their properties, and to assist, if necessary, with any blighted areas that we can help to clean up. We know there's blighted areas, and we want to work at that. This is one area that we may be able to have some kind of impact. We would probably want this group to have some kind of a self-assessment plan that they can take a look at. We give them a form that says that, is your landscaping good, is your painting good, and so forth. I know that you have talked about doing this with another committee in the township, which I helped form a number of years ago, which was formed to take a look at the Clinton River and other things we could do in that area, but this is different. So that's why I'm bringing this forward. And for those businesses and industrial businesses that don't want to keep their properties up, I'm going to recommend that when this group is formed, if there's enough people who are interested in forming this group, that they send out a letter to let them know gently that they need to spruce up their properties, that we're looking at their properties, that we care about their properties, and that somebody is going to continue to care about their properties. That's what this is all about. This is not designed to usurp or take anything away from any other group. It's not designed to take away from DPW, who takes care of our township properties. This is designed to try to take care of businesses or to help businesses see the light, if they haven't seen the light. We have a lot of good businesses that do keep their properties up very nicely. A little bit of landscaping, and sometimes a little bit of painting goes a long way, and that's what this is all about. So with that, I'll take questions.
So just a point of clarification, because in the letter it says, many communities give out awards to residents
No,
and
that's
businesses
the wrong word, not
that
awards.
have made significant improvements, and then you said it's not about residents, it's just about businesses.
It
So-
is, it is.
Okay.
And it's not even awards, it's recognition.
Okay. So,
And we're not going to evaluate like 1, 2, 3. If we have 10 businesses that do something really well, we'd like to send out 10 recognitions.
so the Conservation Committee, and and mind you, I'm in favor of this. I think this is a great thing. This is, if we can put a group together that wants to focus on this,
Well, I'm hoping
I
that we
say
get that many people apply.
more power to it. But again, it's kind of like what we talked about earlier with the strategic plan and the master plan and, the recreation plan, and there's a lot of overlap here. But I think it's important, because you had mentioned the Conservation Committee, and we did reach out to some of the folks that brought forward their recommendations and, made suggestions, because some of these things we're actually doing. So we wanted to make sure that they knew that we're doing that. I was, before I became treasurer, I was a trustee, and the former treasurer was the head of conservation, and he said, we haven't really had a whole lot of moving projects because the focus was on the Clinton River, and we've done the ACO projects, and we've spent all this money upgrading the sewer systems, and so there's not a whole lot there that they were focused on. The Clinton River Watershed Council was doing cleanups along the Clinton River. So I said, yes, I'd like to take this on. I'd like to do projects. I'd like to move. So far we've done projects. We've done cleanups. We are actually the people that went to the county in the Green McComb program to say, we are going to apply for these grants and be as aggressive as possible in getting these big trees and then getting them planted. So we've done tree plantings in Joy Park. We did them in Prince Drury Park. When you drive by, it's such a source of pride for my committee members as they look at all the things that we've done. We also did the what they call the Adopt a Stop program. So when we had extra trees, we planted them on Gratiot where we have enough right-of-way so that we can then and we planted them where there are bus stops, because SMART is sort of sparingly, they do covered stops. Some of the stops have no canopy over it whatsoever. Let's put some tree canopy on there. Let's, people who rely on public transportation then have a better waiting period out there. And then Mr. Keys joined the committee as well, and he created this sort of business sustainability awards program, which is very similar to kind of what we're talking about here. So when Bruce came on board, he gave us some really good suggestions about don't go through too complicated of a process of nominations and filling out applications. Somebody says these folks are doing good things, let's go give them an award. So, so it's sort of a building process, and I kind of liken it to physics, right? It's easier to redirect something that's already moving rather than starting it from scratch. So I want to encourage that we do this, that we get people to participate, and at the Conservation Committee, where there's a lot of overlap, we want to help participate. And just like we did with the Arboretum, when we did the Adopt a Stream program, another program that we implemented.
That's good.
So we're there to help and hope we can build some synergy.
Well, that's good. And when you told me you wanted to do a tree program on Gratiot Avenue, I was very supportive. I wanted that.
Yep.
And I want to continue to do that. But the Arboretum Committee could have said, well, that's really us.
Right,
No,
right.
it's
Well,
not.
yeah, yeah.
Who cares who plants a tree?
We're saying we're there.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Pearl?
I agree. I'll move that we form this committee. Support. Beautification Committee.
Thank you.
Directed.
Is there a second?
I support.
Supported by Mr. Keys? Yes, sir.
Yes, Sam Bushel, 18546 Wayland Drive. I think a beautification commission seems like a good idea, but they would not be able to fix the decisions of the ZBA, the Planning Commission, and Building Department. Decisions to waive basic laws, that a building department has not required commercial properties to go for site plans when making modifications as required by law. They have not enforced the current site plans of properties right near me. I mean, it's a matter of, I've got full dumpsters again tonight that are overflowing. They're right out in the open. The ZBA has given out variances, such as the case of the Bowling Alley Comedy Club storage lot, which is such as a 50-foot setback, getting rid of 50 feet of the setback.
The ZBA has nothing to do with the Beautification Committee.
No, but what I'm saying is, and there again, if you heard my first sentence.
No, I read you already sent this to us.
I sent it to you,
I've already
yes, I
read
did.
it.
And so it's a matter of, they can't, what I'm saying is, they don't have anything to do with the ZBA.
No, you can't,
But,
there's no committee that would oversee the ZBA or Planning Commission.
right, and I guess
None.
this board should be looking at maybe letting the ZBA know. I mean, when you look at the variances on that bowling alley, they don't meet the requirements.
Mr. Bichelle, we're not talking about any variances on the bowling alley tonight. We're talking about forming a beautification committee. That's all we're talking about.
But I'm
So
saying,
please stay on time. You can talk about the committee if you want.
well, I'm saying the committee.
No, please talk about the committee.
I just said committee.
Okay.
Why don't you quit interrupting me?
Well, because you're not talking about the topic.
I certainly am.
No, you are not, sir.
Yes, I am. When a variance gets rid of all of the landscaping,
The variance has nothing to do with the beautification committee.
it's hard to put a beautification into all the
You can spin it
landscaping.
any way you want, sir, but you are incorrect.
And I think that I have the right to speak to this.
You have the right to speak, but I'm telling you, you can only speak to this topic. This is the topic on the agenda. If you want to speak in public comment about this, you certainly are welcome to.
This is something that the Beautification Commission would be trying to fix in commercial areas. They would probably be trying to fix the dumpsters and such. The fact of the matter is, they can't do it if, it can't be done fairly if the building department, the planning commission, and this board doesn't work with it. I mean, you actually approved a tent in a property
Mr.
with a
Michelle,
dumpster.
We're talking about a beautification committee, not a tent.
Right, and I'm sure,
Please stay on-
there'll be very
please-
beautiful dumpsters.
Please
down there.
stay on topic.
That is the topic.
No, it's a committee that we're trying to.
And I'm trying to say
We're trying to make things better in the community, and you're saying that they can't do anything. That's
Well,
not correct.
Because they can't overrule all these different.
No, they can't. A committee cannot overrule those ZBAs and planning
But
commissions.
if this board was a beautification commission, they could start enforcing the laws.
No, they can-
Equally and fairly. Thank you.
A beautification committee cannot enforce laws.
I said this board. I said this board.
This
The
board
Board of
can.
Trustees. If you wanted to if you were a beautification commission, you could actually enforce the laws. We wouldn't have to have dumpsters. And I sent you all those dumpsters you asked for, and
And we've checked every single one of those.
Yeah, and they're all there, aren't they?
They are all there. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Ava McDowell, 19862 Abram. Thank you. Thank you for finally getting this going. Many of us in Nosy Neighbors have been wanting this to happen for some time, and it does my heart good. Makes me feel really good to know that we're finally getting something going. In fact, in Nosy Neighbors, we have our own little thing going with the residents, and it's called a Friday Feature, and it actually officially kicks off this Friday, where we're going to be featuring some residential properties that people have been doing some really good things with.
Wonderful.
And we encourage, that throughout the township, any of the homeowners associations and whatever want to do that, hop on in, the water's fun.
Thank you.
So thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for your support. We have a motion and a support on the floor. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gillihan?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. And please apply for the committee. Scheduling of a trustees meeting to discuss the administrative assistant position.
I can speak to that, Mr.
There is no
No
letter, so I'm not sure. You're going to speak to
that, Mr.
this?
Cannon.
Okay. Normally, we have backup, but we don't have any. Mr.
This
Keys?
one's very simple. It's just as the agenda item indicates, the trustees have been looking to set up a meeting to go over a job description that was amended so we can approve it, and then also a couple of other discussion points that we had at our previous meeting. We've had some trouble scheduling a meeting, and actually, in all honesty, I think it's probably best that we do schedule those meetings in an open setting like this, rather than just putting it on the bulletin board and expecting people to find it. So I think it's actually a good move to start doing that on the public agenda. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion that we schedule a meeting of the 4 trustees for July 29th at 5:30 PM. That it's just before our next board meeting. That's been in line with how we've been scheduling them, so that way we can meet for an hour and then go into our Board of Trustees meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, Mr. Cannon. Yeah, we've had quite a few meetings. I think along with all our committee assignments and other meetings that we have, hopefully we can keep this brief and not have one too often.
Yeah, if I could speak to that.
Because that's not on camera, and it's not public. Oh, it is public.
It is public.
It is public, but it's not on camera.
We could move it in here
So
if
we
you'd
can
like.
move it in here.
I'd be willing to change my motion to move the meeting into this room so it can be on camera. Are you willing to?
I'm willing to
That's up
change it.
if they can film it.
We can film anything, but you've already had a meeting to discuss the same topics.
Well,
A
actually,
number of them.
At our previous meeting, we were given a brand-new version of the job description that was amended just a couple minutes prior to that meeting. And so we agreed at that meeting that we would meet again so we could actually approve the job description, because it hasn't been approved as it is currently sitting.
That's correct.
Yeah, I can talk to it.
Pardon me?
I can talk to it. I amended the job description. I think I took one line out. It was one of those things where I looked at it and went, I don't think we need that. So I got something done. I didn't realize it was going to be a whole big case over it, but apparently it was. So I don't feel it's necessarily that we have to meet. Our HR director said we don't even need a job description. Excuse me. So it's actually not a necessary component. We've all agreed to what we have, so I'm going to be voting no. I don't see it as necessary. If we have stuff that we need to meet on, I'm good with that, but I personally don't like to meet just to have meetings, so.
Yeah, you would be the first to complain, Mr. Keys, if you didn't have any backup material for what's going to be on this agenda that you're going to have, this
What
special meeting.
backup material do you need to know that we'd like to schedule a meeting?
What's going to be on the agenda?
That's not a concern. In all honesty, I don't think that's a concern of this board. The 4 trustees have already agreed to meet. Mr. Aragona, you indicated that we've agreed to the job description, but that's not true. At the last meeting, you agreed right in the meeting to meet again so we could approve it. I asked for time to review it because you didn't have copies for the other board members. And I get what you're saying, that you wanted to get something done. But Mr. Cannon, you would be the first to complain if I just decided to change a job description or a policy without doing it in an open meeting with this board's consent. I understand we want things to happen quickly, but that is not how good government is done. And so I respectfully disagree with Mr. Aragona. I don't feel that it's his role as one trustee to arbitrarily change the job description without the consent or even discussion with the other trustees. And you can say that you didn't think it was going to be a big thing, but Ms. West and I asked to meet for 3 months prior to you changing that. We requested meetings. And you and Mr. Pearl did not respond to those requests, which is why it took so long to finally meet.
Well, the fact of the matter is, 3 of you can meet anytime you want to. So the 2 of you could meet with Mr. Pearl, the 2 of you could meet with Mr. Aragona.
It would be inappropriate to approve a job description with 3 trustees rather than of a proper quorum in an open setting.
First of all, it would take the full board to change the job description.
No, that's not true. And the HR director informed us of that at our very first meeting when we first voted to change the job description.
Mr. Pearl?
Yeah, I'm willing to do this one more time, but Mr. Keys brought 10 items to the last meeting. We discussed all of them. And there was one minor change that he looked for. And if we have to meet one more time, fine, but I don't want to meet as a group of 4 trustees that often. I think that this board meets enough as a full board.
I served as trustee for 16 years, and we never had a meeting of the 4 trustees.
I've never met with 4 trustees prior to Mr. Keys coming on board.
Change is always good.
But I'm willing,
And it's-
we have committees that we're on that meet quite a bit, that serves the board, and we get a lot done as Budget Ways and Means does with 3 people. So I agree with what you're saying, too, that in the future, it could be done with 3. I'm willing to go one more time on this, but that's it. I mean, beyond that, we could do it as 3 members.
Well, I understand. I heard feedback from people who attended the last meeting, and it wasn't pleasant. So I'm going to be voting no with Mr. Aragona.
Mr. Cannon? Thank you. I don't want to sit here and have my feelings on my sleeve or anything like that. When I was lead trustee, we put a job description together, and I brought everybody together to look at what the job description was going to be so that we could go ahead and hire somebody. Since January, Mr. Aragona, I understand you want to move things along, and I appreciate that, but you've done it by yourself. You've moved the office, you made a change on the job description that you felt was $10,000 less than what it was we already had approved on. And we've approved a lot of things in the past that you have made changes on. I really truly believe it's time for us to get on the same page, because I don't feel we are. And I don't want to fight with people. I don't want to feel like I'm behind you, not supporting you. I mean, I'm here to support you. But the communication has been awful. I'm just going to say it one more time, awful. And I think bringing the 4 of us together to look at everything that's going to be done and how we're going to move forward would be a good thing. I really do. So yes, I obviously supported and I see that Mr. Pearl is just smiling away, but I think it would be a good thing.
I'll call the question.
Make a motion.
I did.
We did, and I supported it.
Mr. Cannon?
Mr. Pearl?
I think this could be handled with 3 of us. This is not a big deal. Stephanie was hired. Some of us didn't approve it. Others approved. The majority of the board approved hiring her. There was disagreement. She's doing a fantastic job. She's doing well above what we expected of her. And she's done everything and more than we've asked her to do. And I don't want to make a big deal. I think we could just meet 3 of us sometime and discuss this.
I agree.
And that's fine.
Mr. Cannon, may I?
First of all, 4 of you meeting together and doing something doesn't make it.
No, I understand that, and I appreciate that. I'm not saying anything about Stephanie. She is doing a good job.
Fantastic.
But there are some things I still would like clarity on as to what she's supposed to do, what she's, and also, I think that there's a lot that can be learned from each one of us. For example, all of the years that I have worked in healthcare, education, whatever, when you give somebody a performance review, you get information from all of the people, so that when you're giving that performance review, if I don't like the way she does emails or whatever, I can at least give it to the person who's going to tell that person, or I can give it to Stephanie. But it's all, you get everybody's input. That wasn't done. Secondly, when you give a performance review, you also can help make goals with that person. I've always done, goals. Okay, so what Stephanie, or what Mike Keys, if I would be giving him one, what is your goal for the next 3 months, 6 months, year? What is it that you're looking at improving in your job? What is it that you're looking from us? That hasn't been done. So everything has been very much in a vacuum, and I just think it would be a good thing that personally, I call Joe, I never get a call back. I email Joe, I never get an email back.
Ooh, yeah, that's not true. She hasn't called me in months.
Okay,
I email you, though,
She
and
can-
I've never gotten an email back.
Okay, so your last statement was incorrect then, right?
No, I have called you,
No,
and
you
I
just
never
had
get
a
a call
false
back.
statement.
No, I did not make a false
okay,
statement.
here's what we're going to do. Mrs. Meltzer's going to speak, and then we're going to vote. You have a motion on the floor. I'm opposed to it. I know you can meet three at a time.
And I will meet three at a time.
And Mr. King, can I speak?
I was just going to say, I think that setting this up the way that you guys want to set it up, or before, like you have met in the past, is great, but I think having it televised at a board, I mean,
I don't think it
it's
needs
just
to be
going to be more of this, and who wants to
yeah.
watch this? So, that's not a benefit to the public, and that's why we're here. We're here to do the township's work. So I think, that I wouldn't want to see that.
I would
Mr. King,
agree,
if I could speak to my motion and make it quick.
We have a motion on the floor, your motion,
Yep.
and you have a support. Let's vote on it.
Well, can I just speak to it very quickly?
You already have.
I'd like to, some new information was brought up, and I'd like to just speak to that very quickly.
But you already called the question.
And it wasn't respected or
Yes, it
even.
was.
Called the
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Call the question means you vote immediately. You let two speakers.
times, and he
Because Mrs.
It would have been over
West
by now.
wanted to speak, and out of courtesy, I let her
So again, you
speak.
did not call the question.
I'm calling the question right now. Mrs. Meltzer?
The question was to approve a Board of Trustees meeting on July 29th at 5:30 PM.
For the four part-time
For the
elected
four
officials.
In the boardroom
In
to
the
be
boardroom to be
televised.
televised.
Roll call?
Mrs. Keys, I'm sorry, Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
No.
Mr. Cannon?
No?
Mr. Aragona?
No.
Mr. Gilliam?
yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, no.
And you need to meet three of you at a time. Request closed session to discuss a proposed consent judgment, Dearborn Land versus Clinton Township. We will be coming out of closed session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Roll call, please. Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passed.
Thank you. And item 12, change order regarding the log cabin.
Dear members of the board, the Williams Log Cabin Restoration Project is underway. The contractor performing the restoration work has observed several items that should be addressed during this restoration effort. Attached is change order number 2, which outlines the proposed work. This second change order being presented totals $6,108. Previously, the board approved a budget amendment for the first change order at the February 25th board meeting in the amount of $12,070. This first change order's work was completed in the fiscal year 19 to 2020. So this amount should be reflected in this year's budget. Additionally, the board approved contracting with JFR Architects PC on October 30th, 2017 for architectural services in the amount not to exceed $23,432. These architectural services included preparation of contract documents, bidding, construction contract administration, and observation. The contract administration and observation is also being performed in this fiscal year. Therefore, $5,600 of the $23,432 should also be added to this year's budget. Department of Public Works staff reviewed this change order with architect James Renaud, and we request the Township Board approve the second change order in the amount of $6,108 and to amend the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget by $24,000 to cover both change orders and the professional services provided by Mr. Renaud for construction contract administration. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call to discuss. Mary Bednar, Director for Department of Public Services. Mr. Cannon, if I could just say, all this is because some of the work was done in a previous fiscal year. This brings it all under one umbrella. The ask is, it's not an ask of $24,000. The budget is, the second change order is, the total ask is $6,108.
Thank you. What they found when they started doing the work was additional problems with the logs in the log cabin. I think everyone knows that the building's under construction. This is unfortunate, but not uncommon when you start taking things apart.
So move to approve?
Can I ask a question?
Well, Motion by Mrs. Melcher, supported by Mr. Aragona. Mr. Pearl?
I don't see the breakdown or the, are we paying the architect additional?
No. Well, yes, for the $6,108. Can I?
For
I'm
what?
sorry. Can I speak to that? Yeah, so we already approved the $5,600 and the $12,070. That was already approved, which came to $17,670. So now we're approving the $6,108, and she just rounded up. That would give us $23,670. So she just rounded it up to $24,000 total.
But we're not paying him additional
No.
work that was found.
We're paying for the
Change order.
second change order, which is $6,108.
That's for him?
Oh, that's for the logs.
No, but we're not paying the architect additional services. Is that correct?
No, this is a change order being, for the work that Mr. Cannon just
I don't,
reflected on.
I don't believe we are, Mr. Pearl.
Well, because
If you look at your sheet, further, it talks about the floor plans and the costs associated with that, and it breaks that all down.
I just don't want to approve anything additional for him. He should have caught this.
It would be, you're right. It would have been impossible for him to catch it because it was hidden under some other logs. And I don't believe there's any additional fees to the architect.
I'll approve as long as there's no additional fees to the architect, because he got enough to do this, and he brought an expert in additionally.
There.
Do you want to make a friendly amendment then?
So can,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think just to kind of clarify, and a lot of times, obviously, during construction, you uncover a wall and you find more problems that exist beneath that wall covering. It's similar with this process. It's not uncommon, and I don't know, I haven't even looked at this, this is not my department that's running this, but it would not be uncommon to go back to your architect and say, hey, this is what we found. We have to make a little bit of a change order. Do we need to do anything else? I'm not saying that it would, there may be a minor charge associated with that for that architect to consult. It wouldn't be part of the approved plan. I don't know what Mary Bednar had done with her thing, but that is not uncommon practice through the commercial industry to do so. But at this point, if the total amount is $6,000, I got to assume that the bulk of that is the construction, the reconstruction of the problem that existed.
I know what you're saying. You don't want someone who's overseeing the project to benefit because there's additional work.
well, we already paid him $23,000.
I know.
So I don't want to pay him any more because of the couple extra things that came up. That's all.
Who made the motion?
believe
I
it's
did, and
Milton.
Mr.
Would you include that none of the money goes to
Contingent
the
upon-
architect?
For services, architectural services.
Correct.
It pays to the contractors for
Correct.
doing the work. I understand that hidden things can come up.
This is for actual physical
Right.
logs and things that are going to go into the project.
Right.
Is the motion supporter
I'm
agreeable?
Good
I
with
am.
that if you are.
Okay, okay, so that takes care of your
Thank you.
roll call,
I
please.
just want to say one
Okay.
quick thing. It's all right, Mr. Rivera?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Mary Bednar last week or the week before, and just something to kind of put on the board's agenda, or just kind of keep in the back of your mind. I think it's great that we have this log cabin. I think it's fantastic. I think there's a really cool story behind it, but as time progresses, this is getting older and older, and it's getting more and more expensive to fix. So the conversation I had with her was, eventually, we need to take a look at, you know, when do we cut our losses? When do we have something that looks similar but isn't doing the fixes as original to the original design as it was, just to lower the cost? I mean, we have other things we want to spend money on. Obviously, we're going out for a strategic plan, whatever, whenever that comes back, what's going to be in it isn't going to be cheap. So where we can save money, I think it'd be good. And this, I'm a little fearful that this cost for this project specifically is starting to creep up a little bit, especially when it hasn't been open for a while, so.
It was nicer years ago when it was given to us and put up free, and the basement was dug free. But, yeah, if we want to have something like this in the community, we're going to have to keep it up. I guess I disagree with you. I want that building to be there for another 100 years or 200 years. So if it takes a little of our resources to keep that historical perspective, especially with our campus that we have,
And I guess my question to Ms. Bednar was, can we accomplish that? Because I agree with you, with that look, with having that historical piece there, especially on our grounds, can we do it for cheaper with different materials?
I don't know, you might be right.
Yeah.
And
that's,
I'm
like I
fine
said,
with looking at that.
That's what I'd like to keep in the back of
I'm fine with looking at
the mind of the board. So, that's it.
Okay, Mrs. Meltzer, yes. Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Keys?
Yep.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Gallahan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We have two public comments this evening. First is Stephanie Ebo.
We didn't do the minutes. Or the bills. Minutes and bills?
Hi, Mr. Bob Cannon. My name is Stephanie Abbo with a PH. Last name is Abbo, A-B-B-O. I live on Woodward Street in Clinton Township at 15 in Gratiot. As a supervisor of Clinton Township, Michigan, I CC'd you on a formal complaint letter I wrote to the Chief of Police, Fred Posevitz, along with a video of police intimidating me. I also left a couple of messages and spoke in detail with your secretary regarding the situation on several officers' unethical behavior and writing false statements on reports for an obvious ulterior motive. The chief also has not responded to not only my letter, but several complaints I made in person and by the phone. I'm even getting hung up on. The police have turned my life upside down, and I'm losing my house from their unethical, sloppy, and perverted behavior. My neighbor, who just lives 4 houses down.
You're not allowed to come up here and slander any department, or
But the police officers are allowed to slander me
No.
on police reports because they have.
they're not allowed to slander you either.
Okay, well, they have. I can show you the police reports. My neighbor, who just lives 4 houses down from me at 20780, also had to move and lose their home from the police handling of this situation. This all started when I called 911 in fear of my life from the next-door neighbor stalking me, which began in March of 2017 and still ongoing. His name is Martin Lucas.
Again, you can say anything bad you want about the 7 of us,
Okay,
but don't go beyond that range.
okay. Well, if you heard my horrific story, you wouldn't blame me, because I would like to say a lot worse. Then after a couple of calls to the police began to harass, intimidate, and pretty much stalk me at my house, and then 2 years later decide to list me as a suspect. As if my nightmare couldn't get any worse, that also affected my health. So officer, I can't say his name, put a paid invitation to the spaghetti fundraiser in February of 2018. He walked onto my property on my porch illegally, placed an invitation that he knows was unwanted and was a form of intimidation, so that if I don't go along with the cops, that they would not help me from this stalker. They use as their wingman, who was a black male. And one of the cops said, if I don't go along with them, they will arrest me. This cop could have just mailed the invitation, but the chief used him to let me know this department is above the law and they can do whatever they want with me and other women.
Excuse me, the chief would never say something like that.
Okay, so, I mean, that's your opinion, but I'm just giving a citizen statement.
You're not allowed to come up here and do that to our police chief or any police officer.
But you can do it to me as a citizen? You're above the law?
No, we don't
I'm
do that.
utterly
We don't do
disgusted
that
by
to
you. Why didn't you respond to me? I left you messages.
Because I checked with our police chief and I got the facts.
Okay, that's your friend, right? That's your friend?
No, that's on my
Okay,
police
so it
chief.
better stop, because I'm getting the media involved, and they're interested in hearing my story. Do you understand me?
That's
The police have been intimidating, destroying my life for 2 years.
Your time is
I'm
up.
not interested in the chief.
Your time
Or
is
you.
up. We live in a great country where you can say what you want. Second, Mr. Sam Bichelle.
He uses police to get women. There's more to the story, folks.
Basically, my comment tonight, I put in some questions, and basically, I'm trying to find out how long a site plan, if a site plan isn't completed, if variances aren't acted on, how long does a building permit last? And this basically is partly it is to do to the bowling alley situation. They're now trying to lease out the building as something other than storage. There's a sign right out in front of it. They've done no work on there. It's out there. And it's a matter of, there again, the ZBA gave these, they literally have 50 feet of setback that's not going to be there. 60% of the landscape, it's not going to be there. And then I turn around and I started to look up at this Pacoa Express, because they built this other lot down the street from them, literally at 37641 Groesbeck. And it's gravel, it's got a large fence, it's got signs out in front. And basically, by putting in a FOIA, there is no site plan for this property. The board, this board, supposedly approved this. And I went through the minutes. I've gone back and forth through the minutes. I've gone through the tapes that I could see. This lot was never, the only, Mrs. West, during the planning commission, you asked, is this where you guys moved in your trucks to store them? And that was the answer, but it wasn't part of the motion or anything. And so I'm wondering, if you wonder how we can have blight in the township, it's the fact that these kind of things can go on. The planner said that this lot is going to be restored to its original consent, once they get a CO on their building that they're building. But there's nothing in writing that I can find, and I FOIA'd it. If there's nothing in writing, and there's nothing on the board vote that says this is approved, I guess, there again, I think this board is very much responsible for a lot of the blight. And, I know that, Mr. Pearl, he was on the ZBA, and he seconded the motion to give all these wild variances, getting rid of all the landscape and everything. And I'm sure by your office in Bloomfield Hills, they would not allow that. I don't think they'd allow that any place that respects the residents that are around it. So I think you might have to look into that.
Thank you. I should just state, and we're not going to debate this, we're not going to debate it. The members of the ZBA are members who live in this community who feel the same pain as you do. A motion to, we're going into closed session.
Mr. Gannon, the minutes and the bills?
Oh, I'm sorry. A motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there-
Support.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gallahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. And the bills?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. Melter, yes. Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gallahan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We are going to the closed session. We will be coming back into open session to end the meeting. Back to order. Mr. Dolan, we have before us a consent judgment on a lawsuit that was brought against the Charter Township of Clinton regarding the Burger King property on Garfield Road. Number one, would you tell us why that lawsuit was brought against us?
Yes. As everyone knows, at one time, there was a Burger King that operated pretty much midway between 18 and 19 Mile on the west side of Garfield. This site, however, closed as a Burger King operation and has been vacant for many years now, probably in excess of or close to 5 years. A request was made for approval of a automotive repair facility, which would be operated under the Firestone name, and that was presented as a request for special land use. It went before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did recommend approval. The matter came to the Township Board, and the special land use was denied. It was denied on the basis of concerns largely that involved surrounding properties and a lack of harmony, many of which involved potential noise-related issues. Following that, litigation was commenced in Macomb Circuit Court, and we were sued not only for injunctive relief to get approvals, but also for damages. The entity that brought the lawsuit has approached us and has tried to present to us terms and conditions that they feel meet the major concerns that we had that served as a basis for denial. And they've outlined those in a proposed consent judgment. That consent judgment includes limiting the business hours of operation throughout the weekday and weekends, limiting parking, limiting the times for refuse pickup, limiting delivery trucks, limiting speaker utilization both inside the building and outside the building. And they have agreed to put in additional screening to put in a wing wall for further screening on the building itself, and to install a masonry wall to serve as a further screening in addition to the substantial arborvitae that exist on the property now. They've also agreed to move and reorient the building, moving it closer in an easterly direction to Garfield and orienting it so that when the bay doors are open, the sound flow moves more away from the west rather than to the west. These are all embodied in the consent judgment. I've also spoken to them, and they've indicated that they're willing to further modifications from the proposed consent judgment that was presented to you, which would include closing the bay doors, making sure they remain closed for the first hour of operation, which is set forth in 3A on page 3, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday. So they're willing to add an additional level of sound attenuation by making sure that anytime the pneumatic wrenches that they sometimes use as part of their operations, I believe most of that applies to tires, that those will only be operated during those hours with the bay doors closed. And they are here present as well. So before you actually take a vote, I just want them to approach and to indicate that they, that the
Well, they've agreed to
modifications
that
that
one
I've
change,
presented
right.
are agreeable to them.
In addition to the changes contained in the consent judgment.
Consent judgment as presented with these changes that I've just outlined.
Good evening, Robert Kirk on behalf of the original petitioner. Yes, we would agree to that. Todd Ambulance here from the Zarimba Company is doing the development. We would agree to that additional change in addition to the one set forth in the consent judgment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Dolan and Mr. Thompson, for all the work you put in. I know that we would prefer to have Burger King there again, but it's not going to happen. Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
No.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes, motion passes.
Thank you. A motion to adjourn
So
is in
moved.
order.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Keys?
Yes.
Mrs. West?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Cannon?
Yes.
Mr. Aragona?
Yes.
Mr. Gilliam?
Yes.
Mrs. Meltzer, yes.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.